Today, we're diving into a story that digs deep into loyalty, duty, and defiance right at the top levels of American diplomacy. We're breaking down this source material called The Diplomat Purge, Patriots Against the Loyalty Test. Just imagine you get a call like that. It's only a few days before Christmas, you're one of America's top ambassadors, and you're serving your country thousands of miles from your family. Then, boom, a cold voice from Washington, D.C. tells you your career is basically over. For nearly 30 U.S. diplomats, this was their reality, and that right there is where our story kicks off. So let's get into the first part of this whole thing, which really focuses on just how shocking and, well, unprecedented these dismissals were, at least according to the source material. I mean, the timeline here was just brutal. The calls started coming in December, and they were given a hard deadline: be home by the middle of January. The source really makes a point of this. There was no heads up, no thank you for your years of service, nothing. It was just a swift, clean cut that left everyone, friends and foes alike, just watching in total disbelief. And the fallout from this, well, the account we're looking at says it was huge. This wasn't just some staffing change. It was seen as a direct attack on the entire Foreign Service as an institution. Morale didn't just drop, it plummeted. You had decades of expert knowledge on complex global issues that just vanished overnight. And the source claims this basically handed our rivals influence on a silver platter. Which, of course, brings us to the big question. Why? Why did this happen? So in our next section, we're going to explore the administration's side of the story, as it's presented in the source, and the powerful counter-narrative that rose up to challenge it. Okay, so here's the label that got thrown around, according to the text: deep state saboteurs. The idea was that these career diplomats weren't loyal, that they were holdovers from a previous era who were actively trying to block the new administration's agenda from the inside. This label right here became the whole justification for the purge. And this is where you really see the two sides of the story collide. On one hand, you have the administration's view, using these loaded terms like saboteurs and holdovers. But then the source material paints a completely different picture. It calls these exact same people quiet heroes and career patriots, saying their loyalty wasn't to a political agenda, but to the Constitution. The source really paints a scene here of how these choices were made. It wasn't about performance reviews or policy disagreements. No, the text describes lists of people, not policies, being drawn up in Mar-a-Lago. It was framed as a punishment for diplomats who chose to report the hard facts instead of just telling people what they wanted to hear. So, who were these people being called disloyal? The source makes a point to show they weren't just faceless bureaucrats. We're talking about real people with incredible stories. A daughter of immigrants who mastered multiple languages to serve her country. A refugee who fled oppression and then dedicated his life to defending NATO. First-generation Americans were experts at managing crisis evacuations in the middle of war zones. Their only crime, the source argues, was doing their job and upholding their oath. But here's the thing. These diplomats didn't just pack their bags and disappear into the night. And that brings us to our third section, the Patriot stand. This is all about how they started to fight back. And it all boiled down to this one fundamental conflict: a demand for personal allegiance to one person versus a sworn duty to the Constitution and the country. That, according to the source, was the line in the sand. You could almost feel the tension building step by step. First, you had the official accusations being made on Capitol Hill. Then, you see this calm, methodical defense from the recalled ambassadors who just pushed back with their actual service records. And it all led up to this single explosive moment, one of them stepping forward to testify in public before Congress. And in that hearing, one of the ambassadors stood up and delivered this line. I mean, wow. He just completely challenged the entire reason for the purge. He reframed the whole debate. Loyalty isn't about one person, he argued. It's about our founding principles. And if that was the setup, this next line was the knockout punch. With that one statement, the source says he just ripped the whole narrative apart. It was this direct, powerful declaration that completely flipped the accusation of disloyalty on its head. And the shockwaves, they were immediate. That moment in the hearing led directly to our final section, a moral reckoning. This whole thing moved beyond the Beltway and became a national debate about what patriotism actually means. The public reaction was just instantaneous. We're not talking a slow burn here. Within hours, clips from Not Testimony were everywhere, racking up millions of views. A single moment in a stuffy congressional hearing had suddenly captured the entire country's attention. Social media just caught fire. The hashtag Diplomat Purge started trending worldwide. You had hashtag Real Patriots and hashtag Service Over Loyalty flooding feeds, with families of diplomats sharing their own stories. And then celebrities and late-night hosts jumped in, and the whole thing just blew up into this massive cultural moment. And the backlash wasn't just online. The source points to this really broad group of influential people who spoke out. We're talking lawmakers from both parties, respected retired generals, former top officials, and even concerned allies from around the world. They all publicly called the dismissals a self-inflicted wound to American security. So, what's this final takeaway from the source? Well, it's this. The attempt to purge these diplomats, it didn't break them. In fact, it did the opposite. It revealed just how strong their spirit was. It turned what was meant to be a punishment into a powerful display of character. Proof, the text argues, that their loyalty was always to the country and the Constitution. And that's where this story leaves us. It suggests that patriotism isn't about blind allegiance to an individual, but about a deep commitment to the nation's founding ideals. And it forces us to ask a question, a really important one. What is the true measure of patriotism?